All right, welcome to part two of the four-part message of the four reactions to the gospel as illustrated in the parable of the sower. We're going to talk about the seed that fell in the rocky places, the rocky soil. This is the man who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy, yet has no firm root in himself, but only temporary, and when affliction or persecution arises because of the world, immediately he falls away. Now, I know a lot of you young people out there are not necessarily enduring persecution and affliction on account of the gospel. Many of you might be active in your youth group. All your friends might be in the youth group with you. But I'm here to ask you, how well are you grounded, having received the gospel? I know a lot of people get outside of their mom and dad's house sometimes, or they go away to college, or they go away to work, and they're not as grounded as they might have liked to be. And some of that has a lot to do with just the attitude of young people. Young people are capricious sometimes, and the things that they're interested in when they're young aren't necessarily the thing they're interested in when they're 10 years or even 20 years older. So the question you need to ask yourself is church, is Jesus Christ a hobby of mine, or is it something more eternal that's with me? Do I like to read the Bible and hang out with youth group and do the things they do? Or do I like to share the word? And can I help myself but share the word? Because sometimes kids get interested in things that might be fads, and sometimes Christianity is marketed as a fad to children. You know, is it posters up in your room? Is it your t-shirt? I'm not saying anything wrong with t-shirts and posters. I'm saying, but is that all it is to you? One of my favorite shows of all time is King of the Hill. It's a cartoon show, but it's not like a little kid's cartoon show. It's a cartoon show for adults. And there's an episode that if you've got Amazon or Netflix, you can stream it. I want you to watch it. You can Google it. It's called Reborn to be Wild. And Bobby Hill, the kid on the show, he gets interested in a skater, rock music, Bible study, and he starts really changing the way he dresses and acting like they do. But his dad is concerned that all the music and stuff he's interested in is just going to be one more thing in the passing fad that he's not interested in anymore. So I don't know if that's really applicable to persecution or affliction, but it is applicable to as you age and as you get out of your comfort zone, your safe zone inside of your parents' home, or inside of even being supported by your parents, maybe in college, that's something that might happen. Another capricious thing youth do is they listen to the opinions of other youths, and those opinions might be stupid. Now, this is a nice little personal story I know about a couple of my friends when they were in second grade. I had one friend, Brandon, and his family is very wealthy. His dad's a plastic surgeon. His mom doesn't work anymore, but she was a nurse, and they had an interest in a manufacturing company as well. They had a lot of family money, and they were just rich people. And in second grade, my friend Brandon had some Air Jordans. Now, not a lot of 8-year-old kids where I'm from were walking around in Air Jordans. Not a lot of people where I'm from were walking around in Air Jordans. Those are expensive shoes. You get $200 shoes. This is back in 1990. And $200 is a lot of money for shoes in 1990. I guess it's still a lot of money now. And another friend of mine named David, well, they weren't rich. They weren't poor either, but rest assured, David's got a pretty frugal family. He's not going to be walking around in $200 8 Jordans when he was 8. So, first day Brandon had his Air Jordan shoes, he comes walking into school with them, and David looks at him and goes, "Those look like spaceman shoes," making fun of him. Now, this is a kid, David, who, in his wildest dreams, isn't going to end up with a pair of these Air Jordan shoes. And you remember, Air Jordans were cool back then. But I guess this got to Brandon, and he never ever wore the spaceman Air Jordan shoes to school ever again because somebody made fun of it. And that's how kids are. When they think something's cool, if somebody else says, "Oh, that's not cool anymore," man, they might just leave that thing away because they're more concerned about getting made fun of. And it might be a stretch to make this analogy, but that's kind of what's happening if anybody ever makes fun of you or persecutes you or gives you a hard time for your Christian beliefs. And if you don't think that that's something that's going to happen, say something about Jesus or what Christians would do about a social issue that's an unpopular opinion. Say something about, well, I don't think a woman has the right to choose to have an abortion. Say that. Oh, you're against women's rights? Oh, you bigot. That's just one example. I'm not going to pick on that anymore. But that's what's going to happen. But the people who persecute you for your Christian faith or the things you don't do, things you abstain from, the places where you give your money, they're going to give you a hard time about it and make fun of you. But you've got the Air Jordans, and they can't even afford them. You've got the Holy Spirit, and they don't even know. So for you to fall away and not produce fruit because you're being persecuted by people who aren't Christians, no matter what they do, it's just silly because you have this light that they don't have. Jesus said, when you have a light, you shine it. You don't hide it under something. You put it up on top and show everybody that's what the light is. That's what you have to be. Be the light of the world. When you let people who make fun of you or lampoon you in some way, whether it's personal people you know or whether it's the message you see in the media, even on TV shows that are entertainment that kind of lampoon Christians, when you let that get to you, when you're just covering up your light and you're just being that seed in that rocky soil with no firm root, you got to have a root. Let that root be Jesus and let that light shine through. And I'm telling you, the persecution is out there. Now, a lot of you young people who grow up as Christians, you have the blessings of a Christian household. And those blessings are more than one. There's just that social situation where a Christian household, where a man and a woman are operating in the husband and wife New Testament model and sacrificially loving each other and just operating properly, loving their kids, raising them up in a loving, wonderful way. And I'm not saying lost people or unchristian people don't love their kids. But I am saying that Christians have a kind of love that lost people don't understand. And that makes a difference when you're growing up and you're watching your mom and dad and how they love each other. And you're watching your dad put some money in the plate at church and showing you what's important. And you're watching your dad, when he comes to you, sits down by your bed at night and prays with you and reads you a devotion. And you learn that's really what being a man is. And you watch your dad and how he treats your mom and how maybe she's never wrong, even though she's wrong a lot in your eyes, but she's never wrong in his. Living in a Christian household, it's like almost if you're buffered from everything that's out there in the world. And especially if you live in the United States like I do, where we have so much religious freedom, this is just okay. Nobody is going to come from the outside and put you in jail or anything like that because you're a Christian. People aren't going to fire you from jobs necessarily because you're a Christian. It's a respected thing. But there's a lot of freedom in America for all the other religions too. And when you get out into college and you're not with your mom and dad anymore and you're on your own, and maybe there's a lot of you out there, especially young people now, or maybe older people who are listening, this applies to you. You weren't ever out drinking and using drugs because you knew you'd get in trouble if you did. You made good grades and did your homework because your mom and dad were sitting there over the back of you making sure you did. But now you might be out in college with all this freedom, or out on your own with all this freedom. Mom and dad aren't around to tell you anymore. You're an adult. Are you still refraining and abstaining from drugs and alcohol and promiscuity? Are you still doing that? That your mom and dad aren't around to watch you? Or was your Christianity just a part of your growing up? Is it just a part of your culture? And now that you're an adult, you're going to do your own thing. That's another part of being in the rocky soil. Because sometimes the affliction and the persecution doesn't necessarily come from a person who's picking on you. It just comes from the world itself and all that's out there to offer. And you didn't have a very strong root in your faith. And now you're not bearing any fruit. You're getting burned up. And another thing that's out there, if you don't really know what you believe in, if you don't really understand who Jesus is and how he set his church up to be, there are a lot of cults out there who operate under religious freedom that we have in America that are going to come to you when you're alone and you're out of your comfort zone, when you off from your circle of friends in your youth group or off from your parents in college, and they're going to tell you a bunch of crazy stuff, excuse me, a bunch of crazy stuff that seems like it's based in the Bible, but it's just some radically different interpretation made to control you. And those cults are out there. And cult's kind of a strong word that carries a lot of connotations, so I won't name any of them. But when someone comes to you and they're talking about Jesus and they're talking about the Holy Spirit and they're talking about the Bible, to find similar ground with you, and then when you find out the way they're talking about Jesus is a different way than you understand them, if you come out of a nice Orthodox Christian church, you know Jesus wasn't a created being. He's orthodox, or he's eternal, co-eternal with the Father. If somebody comes to share Jesus with you and they say, oh, Jesus is created or Jesus is some kind of angel, that's not legit. Or if somebody comes to you and says, Jesus wants you to go away from your family or be off into yourself and reject other people and just be with us, that's a perversion of the gospel too. And there's verses they use in a wrong way to try and do that. That's not persecution from people saying that Christianity is bad. That's persecution from people saying your Christianity is bad. And I've been on those college campuses, and I've been to the sermons of those chicken hawk preachers who are going to denigrate your church and your background as not good enough because they want you, and they want your dedication, and they really want your money. Watch out for those people. And just watch out for persecution in all the general. In America, there's nobody dying here for their beliefs. But rest assured, in other countries, there are people in jail. There are people in jail in Iran right now because they were outspoken Christians. There's people in China right now. There's more Christians in China than there are here. But they have to be quiet and meet in their church in secret, or they'll get in trouble from the Communist Party leaders. And Africa or Asia, there are people who don't have the same government protections and freedoms we have dying right now because they're Christians. Martyrs aren't something old from a history book. And you need to realize that that stuff is out there. And you need to protect your right not to get persecuted here as best you can. Persecution has been a problem from the church all the way back into the 1st and 2nd centuries. One of the greatest church schisms, one of the first one, was the Novatian Schism. And one of the emperors of Rome, oh gosh, which one was it? Oh, we're in Wikipedia World. I'll look. Emperor Decius. Now, I'm not big on Emperor Decius, but he was just one of many Roman emperors who persecuted Christians. And under his persecution, Christians were recanting their faith and saying, oh, no, we're not Christians. Don't kill us, don't execute us. Well, when that persecution subsided, those Christians wanted to come back to the church. And some people say, no, you denied the faith. You don't need to be a part of the church anymore. Persecution caused that schism. And that schism, it affects the church till this day. And the Novatian Schism isn't the first one, and it's not going to be the last. But these are bad for the church. And sometimes, I guess as people who come up in America, under our freedom, we just don't expect the kind of persecution like the church received under Roman times and like goes on in some of the international places today. But you know what? That's just a naive way to expect things. The Bible's clear. If you believe in Jesus, you're going to get persecuted. It's not just this parable about if your roots are in the rocky soil and they're not deep, you're going to get burned up. Persecution comes to everybody. No matter how firm your roots are, whether you're playing in the good soil or the rocky soil or the soil that was among the thorns in the parable, you're going to get persecuted. It's how you weather it.